I do like to open with a quote. This is a quote by Dr. David Hawkins. It says, "By believing the source of power lies outside oneself, one becomes powerless and vulnerable and therefore defensive and possessive. True success originates within, independent of external circumstances." So that's kind of the theme that we'll go with for today. Just a quick overview. I like to let you know where you're going whenever I start out doing a seminar. So I want to talk about the conscious versus the subconscious mind, and you may have heard of this concept before. It's a little bit vague and hard to comprehend, so I'm going to give you some examples on how to really digest this information. I do want to talk about the mental energy paradox that's going on right now with weight loss. I think it's very helpful to kind of understand where to direct your energy. It's a limited resource, and by knowing where to direct it, you can have more success. I do want to talk about the power of belief in mental programming. I know how that sounds. Mental programming kind of sounds like mind washing, but it's really not. Human beings are being programmed all the time. And a lot of the case, it turns out to be negative thinking. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to change that, how to become aware of it, and then 5 things you can do to really grasp this concept of mental programming and use it to your advantage. I also want to talk about the power of thought and how this applies to personal empowerment, giving you mental strength to achieve your goals. So just to start, I want to talk about the conscious versus the subconscious mind. Now, we do have an iceberg here, so I want to talk about the Titanic as a good analogy. So imagine the Titanic. You have the conscious mind, which is the crew, the captain and the crew. Okay, they tell the engine room where to go. The engine room, we've seen the movie, right? The engine room powers the ship. It's a lot more people, it's a lot more manpower that's actually directing the ship where to go. So the captain, or your conscious mind, is telling the ship where to go, but the subconscious mind is actually doing all the control. Does that make sense? Okay, easiest way I can do to explain it. Your subconscious mind contributes to up to 90% of your behavior. 90%. That's pretty significant if we talk about what we're doing all day. Has anyone ever set a goal that they tried to achieve and for some odd reason it didn't happen? Something didn't work out. Maybe you said, 2 days in, it wasn't what you thought it was going to be. A lot of that has to do with our habits, beliefs, and emotions. And that's where all these lie is in the subconscious mind. So if you've ever consciously set a goal and then it didn't work out, it's because this part of your mind was in disagreement with the conscious mind. When you have conflicting beliefs, it leads to self-sabotage because your mind's confused. It doesn't know where it's going. So after the presentation today, you're going to know more about where to direct your mind and how to engage the subconscious mind so that instead of a 10% success rate, you're going to have a 90% or more success rate. It doesn't have to be that hard if you put your energy in the right place. The next slide is just it's a complete comparison of the conscious and the subconscious mind. This is the part of it that I do want to point out the most. Your conscious mind is limited. You've heard about like you can only hold so many numbers, like a phone number, in your mind at one time. That's because you're limited to 40 bits of information per second when you're consciously retaining information. Your subconscious mind, however, holds millions of bits of information per second. It's taking in information all the time. You ever just had like a weird feeling about somebody? Hopefully not me. Well, that's your subconscious mind's picking up something that your conscious mind isn't aware of. Something about that person is striking you off, and it's because your senses are constantly pulling in information. All 5 senses. So when that's affecting your subconscious mind on these millions of bits of information per second, you actually get more information than you realize. This is also important to note that this is where our beliefs are housed. And one thing I talk about with weight loss especially is that when you do try to lose weight, your mind looks for things that it can hold on to as certain. So you're constantly forming new beliefs. So here's an example I use about forming a false belief that you might hold on to. I use the example of the Atkins diet. A lot of people will try this quote-unquote low-carb diet, and let's say for 4 or 5 days you cut out carbs. You're doing well, you're eating your meat and your cheese, and then you get on the scale 4 or 5 days later and you've dropped 6 pounds. Wow, what's that going to lead to? You may start to believe that cutting carbs leads to weight loss, right? That would be the beginning of developing a false belief system. That's not what's going on. When you stop eating carbohydrates, your body sheds water and it sheds your glycogen stores, which are in your liver and your muscles, leading to a reduction in the scale. Did you lose fat? Probably not at all. You didn't burn any fat during that 4 to 5 day period. It takes a lot longer to burn and store fat than 4 or 5 days. But what's this going to do? for the next few years, you're going to be cutting out carbs, yo-yo dieting, gaining more weight than you probably lost, all based on the fact that you're believing something that's false. So what I'm going to teach you today is you can let go of a false belief as soon as you become aware of it. Once you are aware that it doesn't really hold that much truth, you're going to be able to make that change. And it doesn't have to be that hard. You don't have to suffer in the process. You can just identify these things or challenge what you already believe and then make it a point to move forward. And that's one thing I will encourage today is to keep a very open mind about what you believe currently about weight loss. Because one thing I always say is if what you've done in the past had worked, you would have never gained the weight back, if you had gained the weight back. And as a health coach, I've seen that happen so many times. The yo-yo dieting is a billion-dollar industry in America. Somebody is making a lot of money off the fact that people are vulnerable to developing these false beliefs. Another thing, too, to note about the subconscious mind is that it's responsible for our emotions, and it responds to images, feelings, and pictures, not words. So if you're walking to someone's house and you've seen like a quote board, it's nice to see those, right? But what I would encourage is to really get inspired, have pictures up around you of things that inspire you to achieve your goals. One thing that I do personally is I have a home gym, and I subscribe to fitness magazines. I always cut out pictures and put them on a pin board in my gym. So when I'm working out, I'm constantly seeing pictures of women that are achieving goals that I'm setting myself out to achieve. It helps on subconscious level. Okay.